Yeah, I mean, I wrote in my book review for Friends of Comic Con that this has universal themes because it's such a big failure, and how did that happen with such a popular property, and you have the hilarious aspects of it, and uh, there's so much here. I grew up a huge Star Wars fan, so as a Star Wars fan, I love that part of it too. But I can see the other aspects being so fascinating, and your book really, does a great job of showing it all.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say that we one of the last screenings. Um, Jeremy, we're both from Utah. We both live in Utah now. We're not from Utah, but we both live in Utah um, for some random reason. There's nothing. We didn't come here like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but he's very much involved in the film, um, in the film preservation and the film with BYU. He was one of the producers that came out of uh, BYU, and they produced Napoleon Dynamite as a student film. If you know anything about that, and that's what he did. So,
Yeah.
um, my point, he set up a screening there, and of all the screenings we did, this was about a 300 seat theater, and it was the last one I think we did, and they'd been promoting it quite a bit. And it was insane. It was really it was really filled with a lot of Star Wars fans in it, which I'd never really seen that response to it. And they're like talking to the screen, and they're yelling out stuff, and I'm at first I'm just like turning to like what are these people are so rude, like not then all of a sudden realizing like wait a minute, that's what you dream of. You found something that people are that into. They'll actually yell and confront the screen. But I have to say the film is very well cut and well paced, uh, due to Jeremy who edited the film. But the one thing that I noticed this last time is that I was just kind of going along with it and going along with it. And yeah, the response is great, but the response was so good at the stuff that wasn't even funny that it was so rewarding. We have these people commenting on the masturbating Wookiee and stuff, and people were bowling over. It was amazing, the response at the very rewarding, very rewarding.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, I wanted to know, you touched on this at the beginning. Was there anyone who you wanted to interview who you couldn't interview because of COVID or whatever reason?
Um, well, Jeremy always says Mark Hamill. I don't know what Mark Hamill would have really done for it. I think we thought we were close to Mark Hamill towards the end. Um, I always wonder what would have happened if Lucas seen it. We could have interviewed Lucas.
Yeah.
I think I hate to say I go back. I would say that I think that we probably would have gotten Carrie Fisher if she was alive, and she would have made it amazing. She would have brought it up a notch. There's some comedians in it that Kyle Newman brought on board, specifically Taron Killen. If you remember his stuff, he's by far. I mean, he has the funniest lines in the movie.
Yeah.
Taron Killen and well, we got Gilbert Gottfried, one of his last interviews. Those people are wonderfully about it, but I think that Carrie Fisher would have been. She would have embraced the project so much, and probably the other one is a personal thing. My father was a producer, and he did a lot of those variety shows. And my father worked with Bob Hope closely over the years, and I grew up in the entertainment business, but I probably have. I don't. My parents weren't. They weren't social butterflies in the business and network, and so we probably had maybe over the years, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 celebrity friends over the years. But they would, it would be like then we wouldn't talk to them. They were very kind of flighty in general. But my mother, I have to pitch that because my mother legitimately was like best friends, almost best. I think they were best friends. I mean, they lived with each other with B. Arthur. My mother lived with her like the last 6, 7 years of her life. At one point, literally lived there for a good 2 years while she was recovering from some back problem. And my mother never talked politics because she was an avid Republican and always kept that quiet. But she knew that B. Arthur was a. My mom would always trash me for liking Obama or whatever. You just sure Obama did it. Me today. Why don't you talk to her about it, talker? But I do think, and that's why it's hard for me to talk about that when I love that scene so much, because I don't know if I'm biased because she was just a wonderfully dear person, or if it was just a really great scene. But I know I had gotten her to do a hard copy when I was at Hard Copy. I got her to do a story about greyhound abuse, and it was a really great story. She actually brought it to me, and then we interviewed her, and it was amazing that I was able to get her for this. I know that I probably could have gotten her as well if she was alive. So I would say those are the two. I think. I don't know if Lucas and Mark Hamill would have really done anything. I think Carrie Fisher and B. Arthur would have embraced it, not just tolerated it like Mark Hamill would, and just go, okay, I'll do an interview. I think Carrie Fisher was her spirit was so. She had such a great attitude about this crazy thing in her life. It would have been great to see her interviewed.
Yeah, I met Carrie once at a fan event, and she was amazing. She sprinkled some of her fairy dust on top of my head, and she had her dog with her, and she was great.
Oh, my.
Yeah. But I have a DreamWorks event tomorrow where there's a chance Mark Hamill could be there. He's part of the cast of the film that they're presenting. There's a cocktail reception after. If I get a chance to talk to him, I'll bring up A Disturbance in the Force. Yeah.
I do know that there was reportedly. So I don't know if I'd say this. Reportedly, there was a chance that we had to interview him way at the end. He had turned me down when I was working on this, like by myself and just kind of exploring people. I reached out to him, and his people said to me, it was almost like a policy. I think I saw the email. It was like, he doesn't, due to his relationship with Lucasfilm, he does not do interviews regarding this topic or something like that.
Okay.
Which is, it would just become. I would probably do that too, just because then that would just become everything he talks about. Just constantly talking. He's already typecast in Star Wars.
That's true.
Typecast talking about the Star Wars Holiday Special. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. That special was considered to be a nightmare, a bit of a disaster. Who does this ultimately fall on, Steve? Is it on Lucas? Is it on? You mentioned earlier that there was theater guys that were working on it. I mean, is it on people that weren't hip to Star Wars? Who does this fall on?
I hate to say this because this is becoming such a thing, but when people write a book, people read a book on a movie and then they see the movie, even though the book and the documentary are very different. Oftentimes I'm saying, oh, you should read the book, because there were things we really couldn't get into in the documentary. And I'm just one thing that Jeremy taught me was he had done a couple of documentaries and a major film and edited that. So he knew, you can't talk about everything. You have to keep kind of going along. And I would want to stop at these little rabbit holes, if you will, and talk about all this and that. And, like the whole Frank Wells thing is just such a huge, yeah. So I think that, but what I'm saying is that in the book, I do kind of spell out Lucas's, as a prosecuting attorney. I kind of, this is a guy. What's frustrating about Lucas is not that he did the Star Wars Holiday Special, and anyone who criticizes him for doing the special is a really it's an unfortunate. He's not really a fan of film. He's not really a fan of what you and we all do, which is enjoy, off the wall, stories and adventures. What he did, his mistake that he's guilty of, is year after year, he's more and more distant about it. That's the thing that gets me. Then the first year or two, and I'm documenting them all, he's like, well, we did this, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have done this. And, and then like 5 years later, he's like, yeah, those guys some people had done this thing. And then 40 years later it's in the making of, it's in the Disney Plus story of the making of the Mandalorian. Oh no, the making of Boba Fett. Behind the scenes of Boba Fett, because Mandalorian had just come out, and there's I think it's I can't remember, an hour and a half movie about it. It was really, really well done. And they interview Lucas, and he explains, well, this started out of the Star Wars Holiday Special. That's where Boba Fett began. But he says, like, well, these people were doing a special and this and that, and they wanted this, and so we gave them this. No. He was doing a special. There wasn't anyone going on. There wasn't action and building and creativity going on without him. He was driving the bus. He's the one who, it's his, which is revealed in both the book and the doc, is the amazing treatment that gets revealed. That 5-page treatment where he was thinking that Raquel Welch would be a special guest star in the movie, in the special. There's that he wrote a whole treatment about it. He pushed to have his college friend direct it, who had no experience in it. He pushed to go down that with the Wookiees not talking, even though everyone kept telling him over and over again to not do that. He did that anyway. He convinces all of his people from Star Wars to be in this thing against their will. I mean,
yeah.
And then he's like going, oh, well, this what really wasn't my thing. No. You are formally attached to it when you have that kind of involvement in it. And, one of the great bites in it is that if this was a Star Wars film, he wouldn't have run out the back door. He would have figured out, he would have sat there and figured out, hey, how can we make this work? But he didn't. He ran out the back door and then just basically said, do the hell what you want with it. And then the writers just did what the hell they wanted to do with it. And then he was complaining. So, a lot of this, there's another theme that's, it's kind of like about, do you want your cake and eat it too? It's real easy, just like the Mickey Herman is her name, the Lucasfilm advisor, wants to say that, wants to criticize it. 40 years later, she's speaking up about it. And it's, and I was very, in the book too, I'm pretty searing about her as well, because if she had just done it and just not said anything, I probably wouldn't have been as bothered. But it's so upsetting. She's very personally vindictive about the Welches who didn't know how to edit. That's not their fault. Someone gave them a show to edit and knew they couldn't edit. That's not their fault. I mean, they did their best. I mean, at some point, I mean, this is a 2-hour special on CBS at Thanksgiving time. This is a big deal, and you give it to two people who've never edited before, and then leave town. You know, like, yeah, gets my dander up. Gets my dander up.
Well, yeah, I think the book really, you go into so much more detail about everything in the documentary. It's just the nature of the format, but you do a really good job at just expanding on everything that the doc mentions. But you mentioned to me your next project being possibly a book about variety shows, which this documentary also covers and shows how bad and crazy and that variety shows were at the time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, I mean, it's I am trudging along with it. It's about the life and death of variety television, how this, and I will say, when I first started it, I was very kind of flippant about it, like, oh, everyone seemed to love that part of all the positive reviews all say how great they love the variety TV part of it. When we show like bad clips and we explain how the business worked, and Donny Osmond is very profound and very self-deprecating about how the business was and how syndication works and how repeat shows work, and the difference between variety television and regular television is completely different. And that world really people really responded to that part of the film in most of the reviews. They will single that out. And I really got a lot of feedback that I should do something just about variety TV. And when I thought about it, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll start off with Ed Sullivan and Elvis Presley and the Beatles, and then Smothers Brothers, how controversial they were, and then I'll show these bad clips about the 70s, these awful, like you saw, like the Lawrence Welk clips, and some of these things are really horrific. Well, I have much worse that we did not use because they didn't really fit in, or I've found since. But I jumped into it, and I am seeing a lot of positive. I mean, my father produced those Bob Hope specials, so I grew up really kind of thinking these were really lame, which the Bob Hope specials were lame. I'm not gonna forgive them. My dad never smoked, never cheated, never drank, but he'll have to atone for those shows he did. He'll have to answer for all that crap. Vanna White singing Silver Bells with Bob Hope. That was my dad's idea, But what I've noticed is that there is a tremendous amount of really positive things that happen in variety television. Like, we interviewed a producer named Gary Smith, who actually was the producer of the special, the holiday special, who didn't remember anything about the holiday special conveniently. But then when I interviewed him about variety TV, he's got stories here and there about the obscure things in his career. But he told me this amazing story about, and this is what kind of flipped it for me. He told me about Judy Garland. And he starts telling me about, she had a drug addiction and this and drinking and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of burnt out hearing, I don't hear about that. I just didn't want to be another person saying how she's a drug addict, Yeah. And she's also one of those people, I don't know if it's what you guys have this, but sometimes like there's an act like, I remember like the Beach Boys. It took me like years to appreciate the Beach Boys. I just would go, I don't get the Beach Boys. What is the big deal with it? And then all of a sudden I figured it out. And I felt that way about Judy Garland until I interviewed Gary Smith. He tells a story about Judy Garland was a big supporter of JFK, and she was always talking about campaigning for JFK. And Gary Smith says, I told her one day, why don't you just call him up on the phone if you're so tight with him? So he's in the White House. So she calls him up. And before you know it, she's singing Over the Rainbow to him.
Oh.
3 weeks later, he's assassinated. She says, he tells the story that she wants to do a special show. It's, and the executives are going, don't make any waves. You don't want to get political. Just do your show. And she's like, no, we had a special relationship. I want to do something special. It was 3 weeks after the assassination. No one had produced television yet. And she was coming back on the air. And if you remember, that's what happened after 9/11. Whole programming just stopped for a month or two.
Yes.
And I went home and I saw the performance. And it's just one of the most amazing. And please, when you're at home tonight, take a look at this. It is a performance that she does of Battle Hymn of the Republic. Battle Hymn of the Republic. Yeah. And it's the most extraordinary performance I've ever seen. I mean, it just put, goosebumps on me. And it made me not only understand Judy Garland, but it made me change my whole attitude about how powerful variety TV was. The heroes that were battling against segregation and who would get African Americans on television and would fight to get, there's all these controversies. There's tons of them. And at this point, it's completely almost all about civil rights and segregation. It's almost become, in fact, I made a pitch today to interview Jesse Jackson. Then that's where it's going, because it's so important. There were so many things. Harry Belafonte, I don't know if you've heard of The Touch, but there's an amazing scene in TV history. It's all over YouTube, where during a song he's singing in 1968, she's singing a song. What's her name? Downtown. Petula Clark. Petula Clark and Harry Belafonte are singing a song, and at one point, Harry Belafonte Petula Clark puts her hand on his forearm, and they call it The Touch because the sponsors went nuts. The show went insane. And then the producer of the show went downstairs and told the editor to delete every other take so that they had to use that take, and then sent Petula Clark back to London. And that's someone who really pushed and used variety television and used the medium to battle segregation, not just tolerate, not just, deal with it, but lots of stories like this. And so anyway.
Speaking of stories, you've had some great ones, great insight, a lot of info. I imagine the book to have a ton of info as well. And like Jason said, it's just, the nature of the format. But I have a question for you. Last thing for me. Can you kind of explain what it was like to see Star Wars in a movie theater at that time? Because I don't know, and Jason, you tell me, I don't know if we have something like that today. What would that be equal? Would it be a Marvel movie? I don't know.
Yeah. Avengers Endgame maybe being the closest to that. Yeah.
And I feel like maybe even that doesn't match, Star Wars back then.
Jason, did you see it when it came out?
No. I saw Return of the Jedi when it came out of the theaters. Yeah.
It's close, but it's funny. I will name drop. So I grew up with the Don Rickles family and the Bob Newhart family, and it was Larry Rickles and Tim and Rob Jr. Newhart who came over to my house. I lived blocks away in Westwood, where all of the where the biggest theaters were. There's about 15, 20 theaters in Westwood, and Star Wars was literally, 4 blocks from my house. And they were seeing it all summer. And I'm like, I'm not seeing that. I don't do science fiction. I'm not in this, And they dragged me to go see it. And yeah, I mean, that first scene when that huge, the ship goes on top of them. What I remember is those passing shots. It was like, that, and you could feel it going from one side of the theater to the other. That I saw it in a really state of the art theater. But then when they went into that trench, I just, I see these photos and videos of them doing those effects with the little, you've seen that, right, of the making of it, where there's a little explosion and there's a little thing moving like this. That is so not what I saw. I mean, I've seen that thing. I mean, and it was just going up and down, and what an amazing experience. And that is something that's kind of sad, is that I had that experience and you guys didn't. Like that was an amazing. There's no other greater film experience ever. I did see Apocalypse Now. I do remember leaving a movie theater in whatever that was, 79, 2 years later, literally like shaking, like because of the intensity of that, of being in the water with them, maybe lesser so. Well, no, I didn't see The Exorcist in a theater, but it just that's something. I was at a conference recently, and someone was asking me that question, what it was like to see that, and I kind of apologized to the audience because I felt bad. I said, you know what, I've seen something so amazing that all the stuff, and the two of you, all the stuff that you know about Star Wars, everything that you could tell me that you know more about Star Wars than I do, I saw it in the theater. And
yes.
Yeah.
And that's just a shame.
Yes, you can rub it in, no problem.
An amazing experience. Just
I'm sure.
so much that, I mean, I remember I spent the summer in the theater. In 81 or 82, I spent the summer in the theater rewatching Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, that was like, the whole summer I spent literally Saturday at the beach, and then let's go see Fast Times again. Who couldn't? There's not a maximum amount of times that you could really see Phoebe Cates in that scene in that backyard. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's an experience that and that's what film's all about, is creating those experiences that, like, I have to say, this is really, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but I remember when I saw a trailer for episode 7, that I was like a basket case. I was literally a basket case I started crying. It was insane. I was crying watching the trailer, and I didn't know why I was crying. I was trying to figure out what it was. I remember when the whole prequels came out and everything, I didn't cry about that, but I guess it's like in 1979 or 82 or whenever it was announced, there was talk about the fact that there was going to be 3, because at that point they'd been numbered 4, 5, and 6, and then there was talk, well, they're going to do 7, 8, and 9, and then they're going to do 1, 2, 3. I remember that was discussed, and this was before the internet, so it's not like I made this up or anything. This was an actual rumor they were discussing, and I guess I was just thinking, like, I remember thinking how cool that would be back in the time, and then it never happened. And it's like you're kind of watching something like, wow, after all these years, they're actually doing what I thought, and it took me right back into Star Wars, into 1977, and how great my life was back then with my friends and my family, and yeah, it was and I thought 7 was a pretty good movie too, by the way. 8, yeah. I did not understand. I just had to basically say, I can't get over. I cannot get over why on earth Carrie Fisher is flying around. That was so weird. And 9 was so bad, it did the most unbelievable thing. It actually made me question why I like Star Wars.
Wow.
That's gotta suck big time, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Questions your love for Star Wars. Like, why am I
Yeah.
watching? I must have some problem.
Yeah. It didn't really seem like they had a coherent plan for that trilogy, and that's what really, I think, really made it tough.
But
For,
boy, that first trailer, man,
yeah.
with Ray and Poe, and oh man, yeah, it was exciting. And to be back on Tatooine, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it take place on Tatooine? I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after all these years, they're really doing it. I knew they were talking about it back then. I'm positive they were, because if there's no stories about it, it was just word of mouth. Was that, oh yeah, this is just part of this. It's part of they're going to do this, and then they're going to do this, and then of course nothing ever happened. But
I think a lot of people felt that same way, because I remember being, so excited for it, and you just look at the box office numbers. Everybody went to see episode 7. So yeah. And for a second, bringing it back to Phoebe Cates, that reminds me, there's a band I like called Phoenix TX, who they have a song called Phoebe Cates, where the whole song's about her and her films, and just a fun little thing that I like.
I had a poster in my room. Yeah. Kind of pathetic, but I did. I had a poster. It was not a scandalous one. It was a classy one. But she was in my room next to Peter Frampton and O.J. Simpson, I think.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to mention we have me and Steve have submitted a panel for San Diego Comic-Con. Hopefully, it's accepted for A Disturbance in the Force. So,
Cool.
People out there, if you're at Comic-Con, and come see our panel if it gets approved. I'm looking forward to that, Steve.
Well, I'll you just let me know. I'll be there. But there's some things that are just really a challenge, and those are the kind of things. Getting on Comic-Con is, those things are such a huge. We went to something called FanX and in Salt Lake City, and that was chaotic. I mean, I can't even. I've never been to Comic-Con, so I don't have no idea how. I just signing up for it. I thought this would be an ideal project for Comic-Con. It almost.
I think it is. I think it is. And
Oh yeah.
And you're right. It is absolute madness and chaos there. But I've been going to it long enough. I can help you navigate. I can help you get through it. Me and Jose have been a few times, and he knows.
Jason is a pro when it comes to Comic-Con, that's for sure.
Look at you.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, this has been a real treat. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. Thrills all mine, man. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you once again for coming on, man. This was great. Yeah.
Jose is stumbled there.
I was gonna say I lost you guys for a second there, and but it looks like we're all back. So your book, where can people get it? Is there a website, or should they go through Amazon? How can they get the book?
Go through Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's you can get it online. I always try to get people to go through Barnes and Noble. Just post Amazon, just because it promotes more books. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not Barnes and Noble. I mean, the actual stores themselves have not been very supportive. It's the independent booksellers that are really, they're buying all the books and they're getting it all ready for my book signings. I mean, they're very supportive, and Barnes and Noble, I don't know. I'm not in love with them. Not in love with them.
Interesting.
It's hard to see when you see it directly, like the difference between a local bookstore, a mom and
Mhm.
pop store that's trying to barely stay alive, and Barnes and Noble, this huge corporation,
Yeah.
not supporting independent. This isn't even an independent book. I mean, it was produced by a publisher. And at one point, I think they even wanted me to buy books, and then they were going to take a percentage off of that. And I'm just like, what am I even doing this for?
Ooh.
At least with like 5% of the. I barely make my money back for buying the books, So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can go on Barnes and Noble website, Amazon, and it's in local bookstores. So,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Here's that on Amazon there for people.
and there is an audio book too.
Yes.
Audio.
I did see that. I love me an audiobook. I do.
Yeah.
I had to drive to LA, and I know I actually listened to the whole thing. It took quite a while. It's like 20 hours or something if you like total it up. And every time I was in the car, I just wanted to just hear what it felt like. It was weird to kind of hear your book being read.
I bet.
It made me realize, like, oh, this part is so boring, or whatever, like,
But
I could have edited it.
Well, I didn't find any of it boring, and I actually just bought the book for my buddy Jess for his birthday. I just gave that to him.
That's so flattering. That's so flattering. I have to tell you, it never gets old, man. Writing a first book I ever wrote, first documentary I ever did, first film I ever did. It never gets old when someone asks you to sign a book or say that they've read your book, which is even more an honor. Like, really, you read 100, 300, whatever the pages. Like, you read the whole thing. I needed a blurb for people for the PR company, so I thought of some like famous people or semi. I work for Jimmy Kimmel. I work for Jay Leno, so they gave me blurbs. I know they didn't read the book. But then I was surprised at the people that did. Like, I would send them a PDF, and a director named Nick Castle. I don't know if you know that is a good old friend.
I do. Yeah, he was also the Shape in Halloween.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he read the book. I was just like, and I felt bad. Like, oh man, I'm sorry you didn't have to read the book. He's like, no, I liked it. And I was like, wow, you read the book. Gosh, you read the book. That's a lot of work. But
that's awesome.
People can also check out my review on Friends of Comic-Con there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there was a whole Spokane review, Spokane News Review or something. Spokane flew me up, and they did this amazing event with stormtroopers. We talked about the book. Could not believe the amount of publicity that came out of that. I mean, it was just, it was insane how many news articles came out about. First, there was a doc review, then there was a movie review, then it was an interview, then there was a story about the special that included us. Then there was a story about me growing up with the entertainment. They just parlayed it into 5 or 10 different stories. It was amazing. I was like, boy, I wish that you weren't all coming from the same newspaper. I wish,
Yeah.
But,
very cool. Very cool. Well, I don't know if Jason and I have that much pull, but we're here for you. We enjoyed it, and we thank you a ton for doing this. Go get the book.
This is obviously much more valuable than a bunch of articles. This is very valuable. Thank you so much for doing this and supporting the book and the doc.
Appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, we loved it. We absolutely loved it. Yeah. So.
Thanks again, Jason, for all the kind words. You still got to read it, man.
Yeah, you got to read it, Jose.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait by the mailbox for my autographed copy.
now. Ooh,
Oh,
ooh, whoa.
hey, I didn't even get an autograph copy, man.
Oh,
That's funny.
all right.
I will look into it. Thank you so much.
You guys, so
Have a
much
good night.
for your show. Thanks again.
All right.
Absolutely. Goodbye.